Hi everyone.
What's up?
Bacterioized.
So Chris and I were talking last week,
I know you were, dude.
and
Every day.
he said I'm at my best when I'm following my curiosity.
That's true.
That might be an oversimplification.
That's the gist is right.
Yeah. And so I was trying to figure out what am I curious about because a lot of the times for this I haven't been I haven't been following that curiosity. I've been like trying to find the best question to ask.
Okay.
So one of my curiosities was like I asked both of you to come up with some ups and downs for the week because that's where my curiosity went. Was like how does a week what does a week look like in your eyes? Like how many ups, how many downs? What's a general week feel like for you? So that's the topic for today.
Yeah.
What were your ups and downs for last week?
What's your general? I actually like the concept of what's a general week look like more so because I think that's where people might have misnomers when they think about like I would assume companies and owners and people maybe in like upper leadership is measuring in weeks is super.
That guy sounds like he's riding a chainsaw.
I know.
Basically
Jeez.
is
I typically it's hard to measure in weeks for me because weeks the touch points are usually great, but they're in service of bigger projects and progressions, right? So like it feels different. I actually don't feel often in my weeks like I have big wins when it comes down to projects, but I do find that I get more small wins, and that would come down to connections and conversations that maybe otherwise or the people listening might feel, which we can make them not feel this way, but might feel mundane if you were to break them down. They might feel like, oh, that's cool. Like, oh, that's a nice conversation. But those conversations are the building blocks for the bigger projects that we're working on. And in the same way, there don't feel like tons of losses either because of what we're working towards. They become like smaller, again, like building block coaching conversations. So I actually struggled when you wrote me that because I'm like, well, the wins and losses, like personally, it's weird and hard.
I don't. That's why I wasn't phrasing it as wins and losses when I messaged you. I was phrasing it as what was your ups and downs. Like for me, for example, I had a high of, I was getting to the point where I was just designing the passport, and I had all the information I needed for it. The passport is this system that we're working on for training and growth for our team members, and it was Thursday, and I thought, I have everything, and I started putting it together, thinking, okay, cool, I'm going to come on Friday, we're going to have our meeting, and I'm going to share it and be like, hey, it's almost there, it's almost ready.
Yeah.
And then a low was like, come on Friday, and there's actually more work to do. And I'm like, high for me was like, I'm being really productive, I'm getting there, it's almost done, and then like my legs were swept out from underneath me with it where it's like, actually, no.
Yeah.
You got to do more. So that's what I mean when I say high and a low.
What was the low? What was the reason for the low? Was it because you wanted to be done with it and you were proud of it, or the work that you had to do on it was just not super exciting, or?
I think because I'm excited to see it finished, and I'm excited to see the final thing and for people to like use it because I can picture it in my head. So I was excited for it to be that much closer to the finish line. And then also Fridays are hard for me because I want to keep going. I want to carry that momentum, but then it's like, no, it's actually Friday, and
you gotta take a break.
You need to stop. Or it's like, oh, okay, I'm stopping now. It's hard to kill that momentum. So that's the idea of like, what were you working on last week? What was a high in it and what was a low? And what are because I'm just curious. I'm curious to know, Chris, every time you walk into the roastery and I ask you how you are, you're like, I'm awesome all the time.
True.
But is that true?
It's a fact. I mean, well, how?
I don't know. That's why it's
how
like,
open are you feeling right now? Are you feeling reasonably open?
Always.
Great, because my highs and lows have to do with you directly, so we
Great.
can just talk about that. A couple weeks
I knew
ago,
they would too.
And some of the lows don't. I don't know. They don't nag at me every week. Something will kind of build up, or I'll realize that I'm off course. So last
Right.
week, a couple weeks ago, we went out to dinner. It
Yep.
was me, you, and Mark, and we were kind of looking ahead, and just my intention was to lay the foundation, which was, in a nutshell, without going through the whole, hour and a half we chatted, my gut feeling is we can do anything here. We have a good team, and we're capable of so much more than we're doing right now. It's our job to provide this vision, but within that vision, we're going to need to shake things up a little bit to get to where we ultimately want to go. Like, we can't keep doing the same things we've been doing and expect to grow in some crazy way. And part of the things that I was looking for were, one, let's just set the table on what it's like to work with someone like me, who everybody's got their own quirks.
Yeah.
And it's important that within a team, everybody knows how everybody's personality is manifesting so that they don't get caught off guard. There's that chainsaw guy again.
Chainsaw's back.
I bet he just got his new Ducati, and he's like, I'm riding this up and down the block.
Saw's ready.
And then the other part of it was to just lay down some expectations of, here's what I expect in that. And we have our values system, which, sets up company wide. But I was talking with Charles, and I was asking him, because he's had such great success with his team. I was like, you seem like you have really good success with your team. You're always producing things. They're always getting things done. How does it work? And he said, I don't think of myself as an incredibly inspirational leader or, someone who people are just going to naturally follow. My biggest strength has been picking people that'll work well with me and being 100% honest with what it's going to be like to work with me so that I get that good fit, good working relationship. So we were talking about that. And it was a good dinner. And then, we got into work the next week, and I don't know what it was. It was one night. My low was it was a nighttime thing. I think it was Tuesday night. I was just like laying in bed.
Night lows.
And one of the things that we had talked about in that meeting was this default can-do attitude. Like, anything's possible. Like, yes, start with yes, we can do this. Then we'll start working on it, and then the problems will present themselves, or we can talk about the problems as well. But one of the things that I struggle with a lot is when I'll throw an idea out there, and then all I get back is this tidal wave of why it won't work. And I'm not saying that we should ignore those things. We don't want to go in blind and just like, woo, everything's great, it's perfect. But I think one of the strengths of something that's being built, it's that startup mentality where you have to believe that the thing is possible, even if you don't have any proof of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of a gut feeling that, for me and you, Jared, I think this whole company is built off of. We don't have any proof that this thing's going to work, and there's a million ways that it can go wrong. So it's really important for us to just start with that first piece of the puzzle, which is believing that it is possible. Like, yes, and it's almost like that
Continued iteration.
Improv mindset. Yeah, and then the problems will present itself. So we had a meeting. I don't know if it was Monday. It was Monday, I think, because I asked to meet with you and Mark together.
No, I'm pretty sure.
The day's irrelevant.
Whatever. We met. I think it was a Friday.
It was a Friday.
It was a Friday because we were having our converging.
Right.
Our
The night was
convergence.
humid.
Yeah, we had a half hour convergence, and we talked about content and going forward and what it's going to take. And I was caught off guard because coming off of the dinner, I was feeling really good, and then I just saw your face when I was talking, and it was just like, oh. And I was like, oh no. Oh no. It was like sunk in. And for everybody listening, we've talked through all of this. So, we're not having a coaching moment
It's
or
not the first time I'm hearing this.
a meeting on the fly. None of this is a surprise. But it just felt like the mood really, really sank. And in that moment, I was really bummed because I was like, what I was thinking at that moment was, oh, whatever we did at the dinner, I was ineffectual. It didn't work. I didn't really paint the picture super well, or I didn't make my expectations really clear. And then there were some other things that came up throughout the week, projects that were getting worked on that I didn't think should get worked on. Meanwhile, other things seemed like they were really hard. So all this manifested on a Tuesday. No, it was Monday night, because we talked Tuesday after orientation. And Monday night was my low point, where I was like, I need to talk with Wiser. And it's interesting when I have those low points as a business owner. The low points are rarely about the person that I need to have the conversation with, and more about myself, to where my default is always, if someone's not doing what I need them to do, or if my expectation isn't being met, have I been clear about the expectation? Have I painted the picture well of what's important, what we need to work on? And that was where my low point manifested from, was like, I haven't been clear about my expectations and the needs of the organization. So I need to have a conversation and make sure those are absolutely crystal clear. And that, yeah, I guess, yeah, that was my low point. And it wasn't, I don't know. I have a different low, like Jared's saying, like every week is kind of different. There's something like that doesn't happen every week. There's something, all over the place. So shifting to the high points, they're connected. Our talk Tuesday after orientation, I thought went really well, because from my perspective, all I know is, for me, is I was able to be completely honest, and you were really receptive. You were taking it all in, you were thinking about it, and your attitude throughout that whole conversation was what we had talked about, was, yep, we can do this. That was the first thing. That was like the first thing that you said, not even when it wasn't explicit. You're like, yeah, we can do that. Okay, yeah, yep, that will work. I got an idea for this. This is going to happen here. This is good. And then we were able to get into some more detailed discussion about, okay, what might be roadblocks, but we started with yes, and that was a really big win.
Yeah.
And I left that feeling really good. And then there was the other peak that happened this week that had a little valley in it, was the next day, Wednesday, when we got together to discuss the passport.
Oh God, did I do something again?
Yeah, you did. Damn it. It was great. No, there was one.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
There's one piece of the passport that wasn't fitting in. And then so the passport's interesting, because you're quarterbacking this project that's coming from 3 people's brains. So the ownership team has needs that all need to be filled by the passport, right? Jared's got a checklist of things that need to go in there. I got a checklist of things that need to go in there. Chuck has some things that need to go in there. So even though we're coming as a unified front, there are these sometimes one-off conversations where we've got to compartmentalize a little bit and then bring it back together. And there was one piece that wasn't quite fitting in, and we brought this thing to the table, and you were like, this is the first time I've heard about this. And Charles was like, well, I've been talking about it the whole time. And you're like, well, I didn't get the message. And for a moment, your face and your whole body was just like, it like dipped. There was like a 5-second window where you looked almost borderline defeated. And then in real time, I saw you come back up out of it. And you were like, okay, cool. Yep. Let me write this up. This is super awesome. Thanks for the feedback, everybody. We're going to make this work. This is going to be perfect. And that was super awesome, because I saw you kind of working through your process in real time. And I was just so appreciative for the attitude that you had, where you got thrown something out of left field and you took it and you just ran with it, and it was cool. And I could tell, I don't know, this, you could tell me about this. My projection was that initially it was a little uncomfortable, but you were embracing it, and I thought that was a huge, huge win.
All these things that you've been talking about are things where, when I reflect on where I was coming from, it's not as you were saying earlier, you want to be clear as an owner and as a boss of like, am I being clear on what my expectations are? And for me, my responses were never from an area of like questioning what the need is, but it's questioning my ability on the need. So it's always an inward thing. So when Charles was saying, we need this in here, I've been saying it all along. My response was, well, great. I've been doing a terrible job because apparently I don't know about this thing that has been there apparently all along. So it's like, and then you're right. I did in that moment. It's like, okay, cool. Well, it's been there all along, so let's figure it out. But same thing with the video stuff. Like my first response was, I try to break it down in my head. I do order of operations, and it's like, well, I'm going to need to do this, this, and this. So that's just the way my brain works, where it's just like, and then I get ahead of myself. And so now it's just being clear in knowing that, cool, that's just you. Those are just your thoughts on the work. You still agree. We said this on the Tuesday meeting where I said, yeah, I totally agree. On Friday, I was trying to say, yes, let's go, but I wasn't saying it in the right order. Because I think on Friday I said something like, I'm down for this. Don't get me wrong. I just think this, this, and this. So it's just learning how I perceive the feelings and how I share my response to it.
Right.
And that I'm clearly presenting them in the right order.
Well, one of the things that you said about Friday too was, look, I'm really down for this. I want to be here. If I didn't want to be here, I wouldn't show up. Me showing up is voting for everything that we're doing. Because if I wasn't voting for that, I would just go get another job. I would be somewhere else. So when I lead with questions or concerns, you're saying in my mind, it's implied that I'm down. So if I ask, well, then we're going to need to do this, and then we're going to need to do that, maybe I'm just hearing that we're going to need to do this and that part, but something that you're also saying or trying to say with your presence is, I'm here, let's do the work.
Yeah.
And I think that perception is pretty interesting because, so much communication is nonverbal, and we can only gather so much of there's all these different things that you're looking at when you're communicating with someone, right?
Oh, yeah.
You're looking at their body language, you're looking at the face that they're making, and it's really hard to blur that line between some of it's projection, but we have to be aware of what we're putting out there. And I think that's an important thing for people to realize, that if you show up to a job, even if you feel like you're projecting, confidence or positivity or whatever it is, you may or may not be. And that's an interesting thing to just kind of check and it's something to work on aside from the skills of, oh, this is how I'm making the video, or this is how we're creating the passport.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's something that for me, I've been trying to overcome, because it's a lot of things where, like you said, Charles was saying, well, I work with people that understand my tech, like my style and who I am as a leader, and work well with that.
Yeah.
So I hear that. And in moments of where I see that I'm being a downer to you, that just doubles down on me, where it's like, oh, I'm the problem here. I'm not supposed, like, he could probably be doing better if I wasn't here. And it's like, it's hard, because that just gives me another layer of things to overcome.
Right. It's almost, it spins in
but
downward spirals a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't help. It just weights all the other things you're trying to deal with.
Yeah.
So it's understanding that and overcoming it is hard, but it's possible.
Yeah, for sure.
Hi, Jared.
What's up? Cool combo, bros.
Ups and downs.
Cool, dude. Those are things. Those are things.
Sorry.
No, I'm thinking about it. But I mean, there's also space for people that have like a moment and then need to come, to reflect on what's going on too, and then come back and, like, for me, somebody can have a challenging moment and still pop back and do amazing work. So I don't think either of you are saying that's not allowed either. But I think if you were to maybe take this broad scope, because it's personal, but it also can translate to what everybody else is doing. It's looking at the difference between what the job is for the individuals and the expectations of the job. So yeah, I'm hearing Chris say being clear about that and then the expectations, that's helpful, right? And should that be helpful and clear somewhere else, I think there's still space for all of the emotions. What might be helpful is that people remember like what the success and goals of their job might be. So taking you out of the equation, Wiser.
Thank God.
Well,
Take me
no,
out.
I mean, but using the same concept, right? It's like, no matter how you or Chris or anybody feels, there's certain things that need to get done to make a place successful. And there's certain requirements of each job and leader along the way that are necessary for anything good to happen and or be sustained, right?
Yeah.
So for me, some of the work, my highs have been continuing to connect with people on those concepts and getting them on board, where we in the past have lived in a place where you could bring feelings over execution to the table and allow for feelings and struggles and hardship to live in place of forward movement, progression, success of projects, and I think a lot of companies might live in a place where they feel like it's hard to move forward, where it's hard to execute on anything because because the default is all this stuff is going to be really hard. There's this, that, and the other. And you end up talking about feelings versus maybe saying, this is what's going to happen. You're going to have some feelings about it. I'm going to need to go take a break or whatever. Take tomorrow, go home, process this stuff. But there's going to still need to be an attack plan, and we're going to still need to move forward. And bring that to the table tomorrow, because me, Jared, or Chris, or even you with whoever you might be working with as a leader, maybe aren't equipped to go through all the emotional feelings that go along with work, the emotional feelings that go along with living in one of the most expensive cities. All that stuff is real.
Yeah.
But it's also not the job of any one of our leaders to shoulder, or the company, unfortunately. Our job is to continue to provide our best foot forward to do what we do. And over time, hopefully there's an ability to do more with the people that we have and offer more to them. But without a buy-in and understanding of, yes, I have this job here, and this is how we move through it, it becomes tough. It can become tough. So for me, that's just something I'm picking up when I'm listening to this story that has less to do with you and more just a concept for people to grab onto. The highs and lows for me do have to do with concepts like that, right?
Yeah.
More alignment, more belief that we can move in a positive direction, and knowing that we're moving away from, or not even moving away, that's the wrong term, but moving more towards articulation of job expectations and the clarity of what those goals look like.
Yeah,
and making those the goals.
There's multiple things in there that I'm hearing. It's, Chris, a lot of our conversations, a lot of our overly lengthy conversations, you end up saying multiple times well, I'm not a therapist, but ...
Yeah.
And I think that bridges this thing where the team members come together, and especially when somebody cares really closely about something,
Mm-hmm.
it becomes more a part of them, and so they bring more a part of themselves to the table, and you get into those deep things that might not be work related, but are how you show up at work.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's there's a lot of these things where it's cool, I might just be a broken person that needs to work on a lot of stuff. If we talk about teamwork as one of our values,
Yeah.
and we use a sports analogy a lot, and how we show up as a team. Sure, we all need to get good individually, but when we come together as on the floor or in a meeting, we're showing up as a team to work
Mhm.
together. And the personal individual work, I still need to be putting the reps in at home to make sure I'm operating as the best person I can.
Sure.
Not just at home, but
No,
on
I hear
my
you.
own
I
time
hear
to
you
make
going.
sure that I'm operating the best I can for everyone else, and not
Yeah.
bringing my own issues to make everyone else have to deal with them.
Sure. I think some of it is also just being able to be aware that that's what's
Yeah.
happening, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
you're still is the way you're talking about it is great, and it's showing some a form of ownership, but it's also still bringing it like it's a negative thing. There's a difference between
I
I
don't
would
mean it
say
as
that-
a negative thing. It's
yeah.
just an awareness sort of thing.
Totally.
Where it's just it's
Well,
another.
it can turn into a negative thing.
Yeah.
Because
you can make it feel negative for yourself and actually give yourself
it's another weight that gets
swimming
added to that
upstream
line
vibes
of
always.
Well,
negative things.
and if you're incapable of handling what you need to handle, so much so that you actually can't do the work, Here's
Yeah,
the
that you're capable
situation
of.
that I don't want to happen. This would be a terrible situation. And this is, let's tie reality to some hypotheticals. We've had these conversations where I've said some of those things. I'm not a therapist, but we've also had some conversations where I've felt, we've been pretty open about this, where I've been like, I don't want to have this conversation again because it's the same conversation as last week, 2 weeks ago, and we're not solving work-related things. It's
Yeah.
all very feelings-based.
Yeah.
So what I would hate to happen is to have someone like you're incredibly passionate about Cat and Cloud. You've been here since day one, even though you haven't been an employee. You're really engaged in our culture. And my belief from the outside looking in is you're someone who genuinely loves and cares for this business, and that's awesome. You also have a skill set that we need. So those are two really positive things that are meshing together that point me towards I want to work with people who are genuinely excited about what we do. Right? That's a good way to go. But if the other stuff becomes so obtrusive that we can't do what we need to do, those two other things don't really matter. Like if we're so stuck because we just can't say yes and we'll figure it out and are just like, I don't know, I got to do that, I just can't because one of the things that I know that I can't do long term as a leader, because we are a really founder driven business and we're still in a building phase, is if I have X amount of hours at work, I can't spend a good chunk of those defending or justifying all my ideas.
Yeah.
Like we can take the time to explain the why, and everybody can understand.
Yeah.
It's really important. Like,
that's good.
Why do we need to do what we're doing? What does this work mean? How is it going to help us move forward? But if it gets to the point to where you're just continually in defense mode and over explaining everything, at some point it's just too much energy, and it gets into what you're saying, Jared, which is, man, if we took all of this discussion we're having and actually just spent some time doing the work, we would be so much more ahead. So I need someone who is a default believer. And I think, at the end of the day, you are, and you're saying you have some things to work on yourself, as we all do. Like everybody has baggage,
100%.
Oh, yeah.
But I think it's important to realize that we, everyone's going to work on it in their own way, but it's not like those things don't cross over into the work sphere, and we have to learn to control them if we're going to continue to do work at a high level or be where we want to be or make our biggest contributions.
Yeah, I mean, so much of my history in being in leadership, especially in moving through phases where you get to upper leadership, where you're kind of sitting with, like, say, a team leader, or an assistant manager, and above. For a majority of the conversations that I remember in the past that are really poignant and big, they oftentimes have less to do with what we're doing at work and the execution of goals, because potentially the goals aren't clear, or there's an allowance of a culture of, let's talk about how we feel about everything and find reasons to, like, it becomes more of a vent session. And so maybe my ask and my call to action for people is to begin to see that everybody who is in any form of leadership should and could be being held accountable to a job, right? And a job description. And that then does not mean by any shape or form that this person as a boss or a leader doesn't care about you as a person. However, their job is not to take care of you as a person. Their job is to develop you and work with you to achieve goals.
Yeah.
And when a lot of people don't like that concept. A lot of people take that concept and say, well, that's corporate work, right? You just become a cog in the system. And that's not necessarily true.
I don't think anything's further from the truth, honestly.
I agree with you. But what happens is that excuse becomes the problem. And then you end up leaving all of these places where you could develop and continue to further a culture where both and are true. You're cared about, you're developed, you're building something amazing. You can grow to the sky's the limit together, should you be willing to participate in it. And you end up going and exploring and having a hard time, maybe doing something on your own, and then ultimately working for a lot bigger of a company because you need a job where it's actually less personal. So I think our growth and our ability to mature is young workers in the world, is to notice that and be okay with, I'm here to achieve some goals. I hope this job develops me, and the people and the leaders at this job continue to develop me, and I enjoy doing what they do here. Let me come play a part in that. Then you can have such a more healthy look at what you're doing every single day personally, and have maybe a little less stress on, like, well, they're not adhering to my personal needs. It's like they never should.
Yeah.
So that I think is an opportunity for everybody to maybe check yourself. There's too many things in the world to get into that are weights that have to do with social dynamics and political dynamics that shouldn't be brought to the workplace for the most part anyway. And that's not because we don't care about them. It's because that's not what this business signed up for. You can go do that somewhere else. Less to do with a good business or a bad business. There's just places for all these things,
Yeah.
And you have to learn to recognize where to explore those things and where not to. And I think that's a healthy boundary to start setting with yourself.
Can you imagine if you went to Disneyland and Mickey's in the corner talking about who he voted for or politics? Like,
Sure, or anything.
I mean,
Or
really.
just having a bad day.
yeah.
It's,
It's bringing people along with you on a journey that's distracting from what you're trying to do. Like anywhere. It's just, what if that was the case here? Like, you're just bringing everybody on the bummer town of expressing that it's hard to live here. It's like they also know that it's hard to live here, and that's hard. Like, I get it.
Yeah. There was something that the first time. Sorry.
The heat is intense today. No, you're not alone. It's surprisingly hot.
It's okay. This is even better.
I mean, we could bring up global warming and just start talking about my issues right now
Well,
if you guys want to, but that's not part of
gonna
what we
look
do
the other
here.
way because my nose is.
Nose goes.
When we first switched over our values a month or two ago, the first orientation after that, where we were going over them, I talked about, again, the value of teamwork and how I brought up a touch point where we used to share in it, which was an old value of empathy and intentionality, where it's, you can understand that somebody might be having a bad day and you can empathize with them for that, and so I used that in saying, like, come in as a team, we're working together as a team. That, if you're having a bad day, that's fine. Everybody has those, but know that when you're showing up for everyone else, not just yourself. And the first time I said it, I was saying, maybe it's good. Maybe you can distract yourself from your problems and, like, focus on these other things. And that works for me sometimes. I have tasks that I do
Lose
that
yourself in the work a little.
and, like, my brain will start to process, whereas I wasn't processing it when I was focusing on it. So
Mhm.
it's difficult because there are these times where personal growth comes when you're in these places where it's not about you.
Yeah.
So it's just, like I said earlier, where it's really hard when somebody cares so much about a place, it becomes personal.
Yeah.
And so it's just hard. It's a sticky situation. It's not like a this and that. It's a gradient between the two sometimes. It's hard.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
What you got?
I don't
Good
know.
question.
I don't know.
Oh, it's a little.
This
Oh,
whole
man.
thing. Well, when you're saying, it's not about you, and sometimes maybe these ideas are conflicting. I mean, the best way that you can serve yourself is by serving others.
Mhm.
Why do you think giving feels so good?
Yeah.
And that's what we do at every level here. And in the cafe, when we're talking about empathy, we're talking about seeing things through the guest's eyes, meeting other people's needs. It's not about what we want, it's about what they want. And then you're saying the same thing about teamwork. Yes, you might be having a bad day, but that doesn't mean you get to drag the whole team down. Once you decide to show up and clock in, you're on stage like everybody else. And if you absolutely can't do that, just stay home. Don't come. I'm serious.
Yeah.
If you can't show up and be a professional, if you made the Disneyland analogy, if you show up and you're wearing the Mickey costume and you're having a bummer day, sorry, you can't be Mickey and be all moping around the park. It's not going to work. And the same thing applies here. You can't be having a bad day and let it show to the guests, because that's not fair or empathetic to them at all. So, Yeah, I mean, empathy's not just a look at me, I'm having a bad day. It's
It's
this
outward
360-degree empathy
Yeah.
that's all around. And yeah, you want to feel good about yourself? Do something good for someone. I don't know. It's pretty well documented.
It's pretty well documented.
I'm serious.
Well, I know.
It is.
No,
I mean,
Yeah, altruism is a thing.
yeah, it's a big thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like it honestly doesn't matter how you feel. I mean, if you feel shitty coming to work day after day, week after week, month after month, maybe look into it. There's something going on. You might be at the wrong place. But on a random here and there, it doesn't matter. There's
That's
days that
normal
I get up, I don't feel like doing the work. It doesn't matter what I feel like. It means I decided to be a professional. So I show up and I get what needs to get done. I can do it on a bad day. I can do it on the best day. Sure, it's more fun on the best day, but I still have to do it on the bad day, you know?
Yeah.
If we only worked when we felt 100%, we're not going anywhere,
Yeah, nothing would happen. I get that for sure.
you know?
For sure.
Who does things only when they want to do things? Children, kids,
Lucky
2-year-olds.
kids,
They're
dude.
like, I want this, I want that, I want this, I feel that, I'm going to cry, I'm going to be really happy, you know? The defining aspect of being an
think drunk
adult
people
is
also
not
do that.
being a slave to your emotions.
Right.
You have agency over your emotions. You can feel a certain way and decide to not entertain that feeling.
Yeah.
Called being an adult.
Chris is going real hot right now.
That's the opportunity and work we have to do.
He's
All
taking
of
the
us.
sunlight and just reflecting it through his mouth.
Photosynthesizing my brain.
Hey everyone, that's the podcast for the week. Thanks so much for listening. If you heard something that inspired you, let us know or tell a friend. These are the types of connections that are the most important to us and that we seek to create every day. If there's something you heard and you want to know more about, send us an email to podcast@catandcloud.com or head to our website, catandcloud.com/podcast, and let us know. While you're on our site, check out everything we have to offer. Dive deep into one of our single origin coffees or pick up a little treat for yourself. We have something for everyone, so check it out. Also, find us in the usual places, YouTube, Instagram. We're always there sharing amazing things. All right, that's it. Thanks everyone for being awesome. We'll be back next week.